The Last Deal, a Death Note podfic written by Pleasant Illusion and read by Hio Stories. This fic is part of my 100 subscriber special, um, where I attempt to record all Tanaka Minoru centric fics uh, currently on AF3, which aren't that many. If you don't know, Tanaka Minoru was the main character of the Death Note short story released in 2020. Um, Read it if you haven't already, it's a good one. But anyway, let's get into the summary and then the story. Summary: an alternate ending for the Death Note one shot manga, a fic where Minoru bargains with Ryuk. Whoever Kira was, Minoru thinks that he was smart. He was able to sell the power of Kira without being revealed, and there's no question that the idea of splitting the money among those with a Yotsuba bank account within a certain age range was brilliant. Kira's brilliancy is beneficial to all, even to someone like Minoru. It was a good thing that he was already old enough to have an account. If this happened 1 or 2 years ago, he wouldn't have gotten any amount. Today, Minoru will withdraw a portion of the money, going out at an early hour since the bank has been crowded since the transaction of Kira and the US president. There's already a long line at the ATM machine, and Minoru has to patiently wait. It still took almost an hour before his turn, but as he was approaching the ATM machine, he felt his left hand bump into something. Something that is lightweight, something that memories came back, and the sudden surge of memories made him release a loud bawl as he fell onto the floor. He was approached by strangers on the line, helping him stand up and asking him if he was fine. Minoru just nods his head, looking up to the Shinigami standing before him, holding the Death Note in his hands. Didn't he already deliver the notebook to the US president? There were questions on his mind, and he remembered what he told about his request to Ryuk about never showing himself again. If the Shinigami is here right now, then there must have been a good reason. There's a change with the rules, and I've come to ask about your decision, Ryuk said, hovering in the air above him. Minoru could only blink. This is a conversation they couldn't have in public. Sir, are you going to just stand there or withdraw? There's a lot of us here, a woman complained. Realizing he was blocking the line, Minoru left from the line and the Shinigami followed. Eyes remained glued on him as he left, and Ryuk started explaining the details as why he was here as they were walking. The Shinigami King scolded me about allowing you to sell the Death Note, and thus decided to add a new rule to the notebook. A human who buys or sells the Death Note in the human world will die. The seller will die when they receive the money, and the buyer will die when they receive the Death Note. The rule was a surprise to Minoru, and he thinks that it was unfair. If Ryuk didn't inform him, he would have died the moment he received the money. Or perhaps not. Since Ryuk was holding the notebook, it must have meant that the US president refused to take the Death Note, making the transaction a void. Minoru was a patient person, but right now he couldn't wait to speak and question the rule, as well as come with an agreement with the Shinigami. He couldn't talk with Ryuk here, since there were now cameras every street, and although Ryuk's voice couldn't be heard, his could still be. Once he'd gotten home, he was greeted by his mother, asking him if he'd withdrawn the money. and Minoru could only create a lie. The ATM machine was malfunctioning, and I think it'll take quite a while to get it fixed. Could you just go to another bank? His mother asked him. Well, I was planning, but the is for sure long right now. It's better to go tomorrow or some other day. And with that, Minoru headed to his room, finally having the chance to talk to Ryuk regarding his decision and about the rules. Since the president didn't take the death note, does that mean that the rule's ineffective? He asked, sitting on his bed. The Shinigami nodded his head. Yes, that means that you're still the owner of the Death Note, but since the payment has been made, it was originally thinking of writing your name once you've received the money to make it fair. How's that fair? If I wouldn't be made aware about the new rule. King didn't like the half you cost, and although I find it quite entertaining that you are able to use the notebook without writing a name, I'll let you make a decision, Ryuk told him. Keep the Death Note and live without receiving the payment, or die once you've withdrawn the money. If Minoru chose to keep the Death Note, then his plan would have been useless. The money would have gone to his mother if he died, but he couldn't just sacrifice his own life for the money. There has to be some other way. Just had to think. Both of them seemed unfair, Minoru said. How about this, Ryuk? Let's make a deal. A deal? The Shinigami tilted his head. I'll only die once I've completely withdrawn all the money from my account. Until then, I get to live, she suggested. Seems fair, doesn't it? Owning a bank account requires a minimum amount. Minoru wouldn't really be able to withdraw all, but does Ryuk know? Anyway, if the Shinigami finds out, he might still die. It would have worked too much in your favor. You can just leave the smallest amount in your bank and live your life to its fullest, Luke commented. Then, produce 10 years of my life once I've withdrawn the money, and if only 20% of the money is left on my account, you can reduce my lifespan into half. If I forfeit ownership, I wouldn't remember, would I? There's a chance that I might accidentally withdraw everything on my account, and I'd say that's a very fair deal. After this, you can give the death note to anyone else. You're quite bold. Are you even sure that there's enough in your life left? Shinigami laughed. Well, very well then, I accept the conditions of the deal. Do you want to forfeit your ownership now? No, once the clock hits 12 at midnight, I'll be forfeiting my ownership. I'd like to keep my memory for now. There's apples on the fridge. You can get one and leave afterwards. You really want me to leave? I still have to think things through. Thank you for informing me about this, Ryuk. The next following hours, Minoru spent his time researching about bank policies as well as writing on his planner. Before Ryuk came back to tell him about the change in the rules, he'd already planned to use the money for his education, for helping his mother with her expenses, and the remaining money for business. 1 billion yen is a big amount, and Minoru wouldn't really be able to spend all of it in his entire life unless he'd used the money to establish something big or spend his money on luxury. He just had to prevent himself from withdrawing every bit of it, and the best way to avoid dying is by planting the idea that withdrawing most of the money is the best idea. Once he'd forfeited the death note, he'll forget about Ryuk and the notebook. But it won't make him forget his knowledge about savings. He's confident in his ability to think logically, whether he has the memory or not. He is the type who considers consequences and benefits, however, he had to be sure. Checking the clock, Minoru noticed that it was still just a few minutes past lunch. He went down to eat with his mother, telling her that he'll go to the mall once he's done. Going to the mall was really a lie. Instead, Minoru would return to the bank and make his plan work. Long term deposit. He'd read that by signing a document, he could make a certain amount of his money inaccessible for the maximum of 10 years. Although 10 years isn't enough time, it's long enough that dying right now. Minoru would be setting 70% of his money into a long term deposit, so for the next 10 years, he'll only be limited with spending 300 million yen, which is more than enough. The lines on the Yotsuba Bank was long, but Minoru was patient. 11 hours from now, he would be forgetting about the death note and he would finally be able to live his life in peace. Hovering in the sky, Ryuk watches the brown haired man walking towards the bank. The man was smart, like Light. Both of them desired different things. Light desired to be a god, while Minoru just desired normal life, denying a power that everyone desires. Humans are interesting, especially intelligent ones, but their intelligence would either be their salvation or the reason for their own demise. Ryuk had a deal with Minoru, and although it felt like he was outsmarted by the man, he would keep his word. Minoru shall live until the last digit turns to zero. And that's the first one. Um, you can listen to them in any order. For the ones who see this directly after uploading them, I've got a couple of other Minoru podfics coming up. Uh, this is just the first one. I don't know how long it will take, but they'll probably all be up within the week. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for the 100 subs.